Hey Fiero fans, you know how it is. You buy your new Fiero, you look inside, and the seats are all tore up. Or there are seat covers on the seats, and you know what that means. That means the seats underneath are not in good condition. So, what are your options? Well, I personally hate seat covers. So I went on the Fiero Facebook page and was talking to some people and reading some posts about what they've done. And of course, Mr. Mike's seats are the top of the industry. And there are some other seat covers, but someone told me that you could take a Cavalier seat and they would fit right into a Fiero. So that's what I set out to do. I went to the junkyard to find a Cavalier seat, but all the seats that I found were not very good. Just the pattern on the seat was just not what I was looking for. So I looked into Sunfire, and keep it in the Pontiac family. And so the seats that I got were out of a Pontiac Sunfire, and this is a how-to video of how to install them in your Fiero. Okay, so the first step you have to do to take out your Fiero seats is to get a 1/2-inch socket, and it's really helpful to have a ratcheting wrench, and I'll explain later, but that's for the back parts of the seats. So what you do is just start unbolting right underneath the Fiero seats. Make sure that you slide the seat forward so you can get at the bolts in the back. The next step is to tilt the seat forward so you can access the bolts in the back. Once again, make sure that you slide the seat as far forward as you can. Okay, I apologize for the dark video, but in the back there's 2 bolts on the floor. One is easy to get to with your ratchet, but the other one is not, and that's the reason for the ratcheting wrench. So do yourself a favor and get one of those wrenches. Otherwise, with a standard wrench, you're going to be going on the bolt, off the bolt, on the bolt, off the bolt. Just very time consuming, and it's going to be harder than it should be. Once again, if a guy like me can do it, anybody can do it. The seatbelt latch on the other side stays in the car, so you're just removing the seat. It's really, really easy. And now, while you have the seat out of the car, you might as well do some cleanup. You can vacuum it out, you can shampoo the carpet, you can run stereo wires, whatever you like to do. This is the best time to do it. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself taking the seat back out of the car at a later date. So, and who knows, you might find some loose change underneath there from the previous owner, a winning lottery ticket. You never know. Next, you want to take the rails off the Sunfire seats. Of course, there's four bolts that hold the rails on. Got 1, 2, 3, and 4. And of course, you're not going to be able to get those 2 off on the bottom until you slide the rails forward. Like that. Okay, here's the difference between the rails on a Sunfire and the rails on a Fiero. The Sunfire seats sit up another 2 inches higher than the Fiero seats. So that's what makes taking the rails off a necessity and doing this swap. So basically, like I said before, there's 4 bolts that hold in the rails on the Fiero rails, and 4 bolts that hold in the rails on the Sunfire seats. So it's literally easy as removing 4 bolts and replacing 4 bolts. The trouble that you run into is that you have to slide the rails forward to get to the bottom 2 bolts. And you'll see that in just a minute here. Okay, so this is how you slide the rails forward. Just move that lever and slide them forward. And then you can access those bottom 2 bolts. Okay, so here's an example of how the difference in the lengths of the bolts. Okay, now that you have your rails off the Sunfire seat, you can put those to the side and grab your rails from the Fiero and line them up with the bolt holes. They line exactly up with the bolt holes on the Sunfire seat. So there's really no guesswork to it. Just make sure that you use the correct bolts that go into the Sunfire, and line them up properly. And this will be a quick process. Grab the bolts, stick them in, and tighten them down. Okay, for this next step, I should have been wearing gloves. I see all these sharp metal points on these rails and the spring, and for $5 at Harbor Freight, you can get a decent pair of leather gloves. And so save yourself a little trouble, save your hands, wear gloves and you know, always use proper protection, because you know you only have one set of hands. Yeah, once again, you should really be wearing gloves when you do this. What you have to do is slide up these slides to get to the bottom bolts. So you move the selector over and slide the slides up, and they'll lock in place at the top. And you get at those bottom bolts. So this is what they look like. And installed, they're not as nice as Fiero seats, but they'll do the job. Hey, if you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe.